Shalom. The purpose of this video is to talk about the accusations that anti-Semites make about Judaism and the Talmud in particular. One of the clear advantages of the internet is, of course, that you can spread truth in Judaism, but also it spreads evil. And on the internet, there are evidently many sites which talk about Judaism as a terrible thing and have all kinds of falsehoods about Judaism and the Talmud. And several people have written me to ask me to counter some of that. The first thing I suggest is that you go to the website www.talmud.faithweb.com, and there they have a detailed rebuttal of the ridiculous accusations that anti-Semites make. But let me just go through some of the general charges. The first of all, you should see my video on the introduction to the Talmud and Mishnah, but let me just explain basically that Jewish tradition believes there was an oral law that was communicated by God to Moses and then on to other generations, excuse me, that was finally written down in 220 CE when the material got too big. The rabbis of that period who codified this book called the Mishnah, that was in Hebrew, and then it was discussed in Aramaic by other sages for several hundred years, and together that discussion and the Mishnah are the Talmud. The Talmud is 22 volumes, thousands of pages, has all kinds of statements and allegorical ideas, but of course, as you pick through the whole thing, the anti-Semites have done a very thorough job of trying to misrepresent and miscast the truth about the beauty of and the brilliance of that book. First of all, there's a general charge which seems so ludicrous to me that the Talmud is viewed as holier than the Bible. First of all, why should Christians care whether Jews think the Talmud is holier than the Bible or not? What difference does it make to them? Second of all, it's such a hypocritical charge because they think our Bible is subservient to their Bible, and that anything but their Bible is not holy. So that's a ridiculous idea. Not all Christians, of course, but the ones who are making this charge. But the clear falsehood of that charge is that, of course, the Bible is the holiest thing. There's nothing that supersedes the Bible in significance. The Talmud's purpose is to help explain and interpret what the Bible says. How do we apply this in a real-world situation? And Jewish law subsequently has tried to do the same thing. So the second main category of charges has to do with the claim that Judaism sort of blasphemes Jesus and Mary and says bad things about them. And the site here, talmud.faithweb.com, does a very nice job of showing that the supposed proofs that claiming Bilam is supposed to be Jesus are just ridiculous. Scholars completely reject that, and that there's no basis to that. But in any case, I don't even understand what the challenge is. We don't believe Jesus is God, the Son of God, any different than any other human being. And Christians do. So fine. So even if the Talmud did say Jesus wasn't God, that's the basis of our belief. And so what is the problem with that? Third, they talk about how the Talmud has all these immoral statements. And the Talmud.faithweb.com does a very nice job of going through each one and showing how ridiculous it is. That, of course, things may sound silly if they're presented as an allegory, but when they're properly understood, they're sublime and beautiful wisdom. The anti-Semites claim that the Talmud considers Gentiles not equal or subhuman, the same charges the Nazis made about Jews. And that is completely a falsehood. Judaism has believed from the very beginning that every human being is made in the image of God, and that the Torah says over and over, there's one law for Israelite and stranger alike. You have to love your neighbor as yourself. Judaism is there couldn't possibly be a system in the world that's more supportive of people that are not exactly like us than Judaism. It says they have to be treated exactly equally, and that you have to love all of God's creatures. Ohevet habriot. And we believe in that the Bible starts with one Adam to show that we're all the children of the same person. That we're all one being. And that there's no notion of race in Judaism. We're not a race. You have every kind of ethnic group in Judaism. It's a people. The Bible calls us an Am, a Goy. We're a people, not a race. And so that's a ridiculous charge. And sometimes these proofs quote books that never existed, or they make up quotes, which this source here, Talmud, faithweb.com, shows very specifically. One of them I've actually experienced. They talk about a charge that the Kol Nidre prayer we have on Yom Kippur says that we disavow any vows we make before we even make them. I once had somebody call me up when Senator Norm Coleman, who used to be mayor of St. Paul, Minnesota, was running to be senator, and he was mayor of the city of St. Paul, and I was called by somebody in Minnesota and asked if, since he was running for the Senate, was he subject to Jewish laws where we disavowed our vows once a year. The man was obviously referring to Kol Nidre, and I said to him then what this site says here in response to that ridiculous allegation. This has to do with trying to help us avoid making rash vows to God about which we'll be sorry. It has nothing to do with any pledges we make between people which are absolutely binding. This is to avoid somebody saying in an emergency, oh, I swear I'll do this, when you can't do it, and then you don't want to be held accountable for rash or bad vows. Or they talk about this passage we have during the Passover Seder, where we open up the door for Elijah and say, pour out your wrath upon the evil ones. This was done at a time when the Jews were observing the Seder and people were searching their homes, non-Jews, to try and ferret out who was Jewish so they could kill them. The passage isn't talking there about Gentiles, it's talking about destroyers, evil people. Again, totally taken out of context. And they dredge up the old anti-Semitic blood libel issue, which I talk about in my video about anti-Semitism. The Talmud is a marvelous, brilliant work, which Jews studied for thousands of years, which shaped our culture and helps us understand the world view that we have and try to understand what's in God's mind. And when you're quoting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rabbis, you probably don't agree with everything they say, but it's a sublime and brilliant document, as is Judaism. And there's no religious tradition in the world that cherishes individual dignity, Jewish or non-Jewish, more than Judaism. We say the righteous of all world inherit a portion of the world to come. Does mainline Christianity say that? Do other religious traditions say that? I mean, some may, but it's a brilliant and beautiful tradition, and these are ludicrous charges. And I think for people who are really interested in it, anytime you find some malicious lie, go to a site. There's many of them on the internet, but one is talmud.faithweb.com, and see how easy it is to disprove the lies and slander against the Talmud. Shalom.